We continue the Abdullah Yusuf Ali translation of the Holy Quran with Surah Ahzaab, the Confederates. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, O Prophet, fear God, and hearken not to the unbelievers and the hypocrites. Verily, God is full of knowledge and wisdom. And that first bit might be better rendered. O you exemplar prophet, have regard of God. Because it goes beyond fear, that term does. But follow that which comes to thee by inspiration from thy Lord, for God is well acquainted with all that you do. And put thy trust in God, and enough is God as a disposer of affairs. God has not made for any man two hearts in his body, although there is an experience that's like having two hearts or three. In his body, nor has he made your wives whom ye divorce by declaring them to be the backs, your mothers, nor has he made your adopted sons your sons. Such is your speech by your mouths, but God tells you the truth, and he shows the way. Call them by their fathers' names. That is juster in the sight of God. But if you know not their fathers, your brothers in faith are your patrons, but there is no blame on ye if ye make a mistake therein. The intention of your hearts is what counts, and God is oft forgiving, most merciful. And adopted sons is not quite the thing, but people who you taken in under your care. The prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves, and his wives are their mothers. Blood relations among each other have closer personal ties in the decree of God than the brotherhood of believers and immigrants. Nevertheless, do ye what is just to your closest friends. Such is the writing of the decree of God. And remember, we took from the prophets their covenant, as we did from Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, the son of Mary. We took from them a solemn covenant, that God may question the custodians of truth concerning the truth they are charged with, and he has prepared for the unbelievers a grievous penalty. O ye who believe, remember the grace of God bestowed on you when there came down on you hosts to overwhelm you, but we sent against them a hurricane and forces that ye saw not, but God sees clearly all that ye do. Behold, they came on you from above you and from below you, and behold, the eyes became dim and the hearts gaped up to the throats, and ye imagined various vain thoughts about God. In that situation where the believers tried, they were shaken as by a tremendous shaking, and behold, the hypocrites and those in whose hearts it is a disease say, God and his messenger promised us nothing but delusions. Behold, a party of them said, Ye men of Yathrib, now called Medina Nabi, ye cannot stand the attack. Therefore go back, and a band of them asked for leave of the prophet, saying, Truly our houses are bare and exposed. Though they were not exposed, they intended nothing but to run away, and if the entry had been effected to them from the sides of the city, and they had been incited to sedition, they would have certainly brought it to pass. with none but a brief delay, and yet they had already covenanted with God not to turn their backs, and a covenant with God must surely be answered for. Say, running away will not profit you, if ye are running away from death or slaughter, and even if ye do escape, no more than a brief respite will ye be allowed to enjoy. Say, who is it that can screen you from God, if it be his wish to give you punishment or to give you mercy? Nor will they find for themselves besides God any protector or helper. Verily God knows those among you who keep back men, and those who say to their brethren, come along to us, but come not to the fight except for a little while, covetous over you, when fear comes, and thou wilt see them looking to thee, their eyes revolving like Ahzaab, one over whom hovers death. But when the fear is past, they will smite you with sharp tongues, covetous of goods. Such men have no faith, and so God has made their deeds of none effect, and that is easy for God. They think that the Confederates have not withdrawn, and if the Confederates should come again, they would wish they were in the deserts, wandering among the Bedouin, and speaking news and seeking news about you from a safe distance. Or so they think. And if they were in your midst, they would fight but little. Ye have indeed in the messenger of God a beautiful pattern of conduct for anyone whose hope is in God and the final day, and who engages much in the praise of God. When the believers saw the Confederate forces, they said, and this is what God and his messenger had promised us, and God and his messenger told us what was true, and it only added to their faith and their zeal and obedience. Among the believers are men who have been true to their covenant with God. Of them some have completed their vow to the extreme, and some still wait, but they have never changed their determination in the least, that God may reward the men of truth for their truth, and punish the hypocrites, if that be his will, or turn to them in mercy, for God is oft forgiving, most merciful, and God turned back the unbelievers for all their fury. No advantage did they gain, and enough is God for the believers in their fight, and God is full of strength, able to enforce his will, and those of the people of the book who aided them, God did take them down from their strongholds, and cast terror into their hearts, so that some ye slew, and some ye made prisoners, and he made you heirs of their lands, their houses, and their goods, and of a land which ye had not frequented before. And God has power over all things. O prophet, say to thy consorts, if it be that ye desire the life of this world, and its glitter, then come, I will provide for you, for your enjoyment, and set you free in a handsome manner. But if ye seek God and his messenger, and the home of the hereafter, verily God is prepared for the well-doers amongst you a great reward. O consorts of the prophet, if any of you were guilty of evident unseemly conduct, the punishment would be doubled to her, and that is easy for God. But if any of you that is devout in the service of God and his messenger, and works righteousness, to her shall we grant her reward twice, and we shall have prepared for her a generous sustenance. Double because of the natural influence that they would have automatically. O consorts of the prophet, ye are not like any of the other women, if ye do fear God. Be not too complacent of speech, lest one in whose heart is a disease should be moved with desire, but speak ye a speech that is just, and stay quietly in your houses, and make not a dazzling display like that of the former times of ignorance, and establish regular prayers, and give regular charity, and obey God and his messenger. And God only wishes to remove all abominations from you, ye members of the family, and to make you pure and spotless, and recite what is rehearsed to you in your homes of the signs of God and his wisdom, for God understands the finest mysteries and is well acquainted with them. For Muslim men and Muslim women, for believing men and believing women, for devout men and women, for true men and women, for men and women who are patient and constant, for men and women who humble themselves, for men and women who give in charity, for men and women who fast, for men and women who guard their chastity, who guard their private parts from unlawful use or being seen, and for men and women who engage in much in God's praise, for them has God prepared forgiveness and great reward. It is not fitting for a believer, man or woman, when a matter has been decided by God and his messenger, to have any option about their decision. If anyone disobeys God and his messenger, he is indeed on a clearly wrong path. Behold, thou didst say to one who had received the grace of God and thy favor, retain in wedlock thy wife and fear God, but thou didst hide in thy heart that which God was about to make manifest. Thou didst fear the people, but it is more fitting that thou shouldest fear God. When Zayd had dissolved his marriage with her, with the necessary formality, we joined her in marriage to thee, in order that in future there may be no difficulty to the believers in the matter of marriage with the wives of those that they have adopted guardianship of, when the latter have dissolved with the necessary formality their marriage with them, and God's command must be fulfilled. There can be no difficulty to the prophet in what God has indicated to him as a duty. It was the practice approved of God amongst those of old that have passed away, and the command of God is a decree determined. It is the practice of those who preach the messages of God and fear him, and fear none but God, and enough is God to call humanity and jinn to account. Muhammad is not the father of any of your men, but he is the messenger of God and the seal of the exemplar prophets, and God has full knowledge of all things. O ye who believe, celebrate the praises of God, and do so often, and glorify him morning and evening. He it is who sends blessings on you, as do his angels, fallen like pigs, that he may bring you out from the depths of darkness into light, and he is full of mercy to the believers. Their salvation on the day they meet him will be peace, and he has prepared for them a generous reward. O prophet, truly we have sent thee as a witness, a bearer of glad tidings and a warner, and as one who invites to God's grace by his leave, and as a lamp spreading light. Then give the glad tidings to the believers, that they shall have from God a very great bounty, and obey not the behests of the unbelievers and the hypocrites, and heed not their annoyances, but put thy trust in God, for enough is God as a disposer of affairs. O ye who believe, when ye marry believing women, and then divorce them before ye have touched them, no period of waiting have ye to count in respect of them, so give them a present, and set them free in a handsome manner. O prophet, we have made lawful to thee thy wives to whom thou hast paid their dowers, and those whom thy right hand possesses, out of the prisoners of war, whom, marrying them lawfully, God has assigned to thee, and daughters of thy paternal uncles and aunts, and daughters of thy maternal uncles and aunts, whom migrated from Mecca with thee, and any believing woman who dedicates her soul to the Prophet, if the Prophet wishes to wed her, and this is only for thee and not for the believers at large. We know what we have appointed for them as to their wives and the captives whom their right hands possess. You know nothing about forced marriage. In order that there should be no difficulty for thee, and God is oft forgiving, most merciful, thou mayest defer the turn of any of them that thou pleasest, and thou mayest receive any thou pleasest, and if there is no blame on thee, if thou invite one whose turn thou hadst set aside, this were nigher to the cooling of the eyes, the prevention of their grief, and their satisfaction, that of all of them, with that which thou hast to give them, and God knows that is in your hearts, and God is all-knowing, most forbearing. It is not lawful for thee to marry more women after this, nor to change them for other wives, even though their beauty attract thee, except any thy right hand should possess as handmaidens, taken lawfully in marriage. And God doth watch over all things. O ye who believe, enter not the prophets' houses until leave is given you for a meal, and then not so early as to wait for its preparation, but when ye are invited, enter, and when ye have taken your meal, disperse, without seeking familiar talk. Such behavior annoys the prophet. He is ashamed to dismiss you, but God is not ashamed to tell you the truth. And when ye ask his ladies for anything ye want, ask them from before a screen that makes for greater purity for your hearts and for theirs. Nor is it right for you that ye should annoy God's messenger, or ye should marry his widows after him at any time. Truly such a thing is in God's sight an enormity. Whether ye reveal anything or conceal it, verily God has full knowledge of all things. There is no blame on those ladies if they appear before their fathers are their sons, their brothers are their brothers' sons, are their sisters' sons, are their women, are the slaves whom their right hands possess. And ladies, fear God, for God is witness to all things. God and his fallen angels send blessings on the prophet. O ye that believe, send blessings on him, and salute him with all respect. Those who annoy God and his messenger, God has cursed them in this world and in the hereafter, and has prepared for them a humiliating punishment. And those who annoy believing men and women undeservedly bear on themselves a calumny and a glaring sin. O prophet, tell thy wives and daughters and the believing women that they should cast their outer garments over their persons when abroad, and that is most convenient, that they should be known as such, and not molested. And God is oft forgiving, most merciful. Truly, if the hypocrites, and those in whose hearts is a disease, and those who spread false rumors in the city, desist not, we shall certainly stir thee up against them. Then will they not be able to stay in it as thy neighbors for any length of time. They shall have a curse on them wherever they are found, and they shall be seized and slain without mercy. the law of God among them, who lived aforetime, no change wilt thou find in the law of God. Men ask thee concerning the hour, say the knowledge thereof is with God alone. And what will make thee understand perchance the hour is nigh? Verily God has cursed the unbelievers and prepared for them a blazing fire to dwell therein forever. No protector will they find, nor helper. The day that their faces will be turned upside down in the fire, they will say, woe to us, when that we had obeyed God and obeyed the messenger. And they would say, our Lord, we obeyed our chiefs and our great ones, and they misled us as to the right path. Our Lord, give them double penalty and curse them with a very great curse. O ye who believe, be not like those who vexed and insulted Moses, but God cleared him of the calumnies they had uttered, and he was honorable in God's sight. O ye who believe, fear God, and always say a word directed to the right, that he may make your conduct whole and sound and forgive you your sins. He that obeys God and his messenger has already attained the highest achievement. We did indeed offer the trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they refused to undertake it, being afraid thereof. But man undertook it. He was indeed unjust and foolish, with the result that God has to punish the hypocrites, men and women, and the unbelievers, men and women, and God turns in mercy to the believers, men and women, for God is oft forgiving, most merciful. And we see that these people weren't punished for being disbelievers or went after because of being disbelievers, that they did stuff that persecuted, that even had violence by a robbery by themselves or others against, the Muslimin, their community. People that supported that chapter refers to people who supported wars against the Muslims, and the warmonger who sits in their citadels, or whatever phrase you're going to use for that sort of behavior, but doesn't do the fighting themselves. Well, they're more of a problem with the soldiers themselves, right? And the people of the house, yes, the people being referred to is Fatima, Ali, Hassan, and Hussein, in particular, the people that were kept pure. And they say also the, male line that continued for another, 10 generations after that. Well, I mean, 9 generations after that, because Ali, Hassan, Hussein was the first 3. But that makes sense. I wouldn't go as far as what would be typical of Shia doctrine there. Definitely the Sunni would agree with that sort of thing that I say there, because that's in their narrations. And people would call their mothers as, refer to them, make them as the backs. They would literally treat them like their mother's backs, like something forbidden. And in Islam, we may adopt taking care of people, but we're not giving them our family identity. And that passage also addresses the practice that people, whether to join tribes to have advantage or what, we're supposed to stay perfectly honest about our lineage. And I mean, God judges us according to our intentions. Sometimes people give us wrong information.